My long-term goal is to have a farm and to live out as many hours away from you people as possible and let you enjoy your multiculturalism, diversity, and sodomy.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. We were off for 4th of July. I hope you guys had a very nice one. I hope that everything went as you might hope. And I'm looking forward to getting after it with you guys today. What a interesting way to end the weekend, huh? Apparently, we've all been gaslighting ourselves. We just made it up. There was this guy, he was arrested. It was an effort apparently to involve a bunch of very powerful people in blackmail by having them have sex with children. There were files and tens of thousands of videos. There were lists of clients who were powerful people around the globe. There were intelligence agencies involved. But it turns out all that was just made up, if you want to believe what the DOJ and the FBI released yesterday. It's just made up. Apparently, Jeffrey Epstein was just a really cool guy with a lot of money who also might have been a really bad dude, but all by himself. He didn't have any friends. He didn't share any of his stuff with anyone else. He didn't share any of the women that he was abusing with anyone else. And then he got arrested and then he killed himself for, I guess, no reason. It's just him. There's no other reason to worry about it. No Epstein files, no Epstein client list, no evidence of blackmail, no co-conspirators, and no charges should be expected or pending. That's what we got yesterday. Anyone else? I got a call from Alex Jones this morning because I actually told you guys we weren't going to get anything going back to May 12th of this year, and I actually suspected it back in March when I went on InfoWars. Just because they were involved in playing with files doesn't mean that they were actually getting ready to release anything, and that has proven true. Garrett O'Boyle went on the Benny Johnson show and said as much. The problem with an agency that is currently working against you, and by you, I mean you, the American people, folks who are listening to this, we have a DOJ and an FBI that has been working against us for years. I'm not making that up. I'm not a guy on a podcast telling you something. I'm telling you that when I worked for the FBI in 2020, we all saw the election. We all saw the weird sort of shenanigans posted around social media, some of which were probably BS, some of which were legitimate, real actual concerns about election interference, election fraud, people that were juicing the ballots and so on. And your taxpayer-funded Department of Justice, which was supposed to get to the bottom, they were the few people that had the federal nexus to do this, said, no, we're not interested in checking out credible claims of election fraud. And they fired people. They removed people from their jobs on election fraud and election interference task force in the Washington field office where I used to work. So I'm not just a guy speaking out of turn here. I know people who lost their ability to do a job they'd been doing for over a decade because of that. So that agency worked against you and the interests of American justice and the expectations that we would have that they would actually go out and do the one thing that you think the one agency might be able to do to go after it. Isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy to think that we would have this organization with a federal nexus that is one of the few groups that can actually investigate real corruption? It's supposed to be. That's actually the reason why you're not supposed to be from the place that you're assigned. New FBI agents are actually assigned to a new place where they're not from, not where they were recruited out of, because they're supposed to go somewhere where they don't have connections and they're not likely to engage in the local petty politics and corruption. That's what's supposed to happen. And it didn't happen. So we're going to cover that. We also had some really aggressive flooding that happened in the state of Texas. Many of you guys recognize that. Thanks for all the people that reached out to us to make sure that we were okay. We have a family member who lost her home, and she's okay. So it's just property, catastrophic property loss, but property just nonetheless. And their lives are okay. And a lot of young people lost their lives. The sad thing is that this was immediately politicized by the political left. They went out there and tried to act like this was somehow like a political failure on Donald Trump's part. So we'll talk about some of that, some of the lies that went out there. The warnings were there. The agencies that they think were defunded were not defunded. So we'll debunk that for you as well. And the big, beautiful bill passed, which means that we are going to be trillions more dollars in debt. Our government is going to be funded at extraordinary levels. There's going to be hundreds of billions of dollars put into law enforcement efforts and deportations. But immediately right afterwards, we had Donald Trump go and back things up. And he said that he wanted to actually create some amnesty programs. So I got a little bit of an issue with that. Some of you may as well. We're going to get started by reminding you that things can always be bad. And unfortunately, that is a reality. It doesn't matter who's in the office. So we just had the events of July the 4th. We were celebrating our independence. And I will tell you guys, if you want to be truly independent, one of the easiest ways you can do it is to make sure that you have redundancy when it comes to food and to water and filtration, when it comes to power and so on. If you're not taking stock of your own personal inventory to stand on your own 2 feet, then you're in a bad spot. Every 4th of July, we think about what it means to be free. But it's not just about fireworks. It's not about cookouts. It's not about torrential rains if you live in the central Texas area. It's about remembering that freedom was earned and that keeping it means that you must take personal responsibility for it, for yourself, for your families. We have My Patriot Supply tools here, including the new Grid Doctor 3300. I have that running the entire studio. That's what we're running off right now. The power is being filtered through there. The upside for me is that we actually did lose power over the weekend, and everything here is 100% working the way we hoped it would. So that's something you guys can do. If you haven't checked into Backup Power, look into it. They're an American-owned and operated company. They're vertically integrated on a lot of their product lines, which means they make it and then they distribute it and they sell it directly to you, which means they can do quality control on it. Doesn't matter whether we're talking about storms or blackouts or brownouts or shortages or food supply chains or worse, things that happened during COVID, things that happened during national emergencies. Stock up on emergency food and water filtration and solar backup powers, and make sure that you can sleep easily at night now that the fireworks have dissipated. MyPatriotSupply.com/Kyle is the website. It's MyPatriotSupply.com/KYLE. If you believe in self-reliance, personal responsibility, if you listen to the show, that's probably something you know about. We believe in prepare, not repair. Then you defend freedom up front with some good decisions. Check out MyPatriotSupply.com/KYLE if you guys want to look into all the products they have. Their 4th of July sale goes on for one more day. It'll be over at the end of the day tomorrow. So we'll probably do one more reminder of that. Let's get into it today. There's a lot to cover. A lot of this stuff, totally nuts. And here we go. All right, my friends. And so we're going to begin where it should begin, which is that we have a death toll that is rising in the state of Texas, particularly the central Texas area and the Hill Country. You're seeing pictures come in. We've seen families send videos of small properties that are completely devastated. The folks that are along the water line for the Guadalupe and for the San Gabriel River, which is only 700 yards away from my back fence. I had the landlord for our house reach out and ask if everything was okay. I was like, yeah. The fact of the matter is that certain areas are designed to handle floods, and some people live very close to the river because it's beautiful, but somewhere between 5 and 100 years, that river floods. And it does it inevitably. It's a predictable consequence of living on these rivers. If you don't know much about the way that Texas works, and I understand that everyone has different topography, they have different geology where they live. We live on these sort of like limestone and shale shelves. So it gets very dry here. It gets very hot here, and the water can only penetrate so much when it drops down. We were catching 2 inches of rain per hour for something like 50 straight hours, and there was nowhere for a lot of this water to go. The thing that I'm not seeing, because you did see a lot of people talk about, oh, it was climate change, and it's the fault of Donald Trump for defunding NOAA or like taking people out of these positions at NOAA. Let's get real serious about it. Central Texas, in particular, has had a massive influx of people. Human beings have moved here by the hundreds of thousands over the past couple years. And so whatever the maps are that look like, that tell you, everybody who's never seen a flood zone, if you've never lived near water, maybe that's not a part of your life, but flood zones are a real thing. My wife and I when we first got married, lived in an area that was in the 100-year floodplain. I used to go run around what's called, they call it Ladybird Lake, but people from Texas or from Austin call it the Town Lake. And it's a branch of the lower Colorado River that runs south of downtown Austin. And I used to jog around that. It's like a 10-mile loop. That was my thing when I got out of the military. I would go and do that and get my head right. And you can find postings done by the city that regularly will show you what are the boundaries of, let's say, the 5 and 10 year flood zones, where they expect within a 10-year period, normal rain will flood those areas. Okay. And then they block it out, and they have usually like a 25-year or a 40-year and a 50-year floodplain going all the way out to like 100 years, which are your kind of like once in a lifetime, once in a generation floods. The problem is all of those are based on maps, and all of those are based on estimations of current rainfall and the way that it currently has been absorbed historically. When you take people who didn't used to live here and you start building up concrete and foundations, when you start building up roadways that didn't previously exist when all of those maps were created, you're going to make those 100-year floodplains closer to 50-year floodplains. You're going to take the ground that would normally absorb a lot of this water and put it down into the water table. It gets wild because it's unpredictable. We've added millions, maybe tens of millions of square foot, probably tens of millions, maybe more than that, of foundational space, of ground that is no longer going to absorb water. And so all of that water has to go somewhere, and it gets thrown into these basins, and Texas rivers flood. When I was a kid, we lived outside of Dallas in a place called Coppell, and we had a backyard that backed up to a creek. The creek, some of you have never seen something like this, so I actually do have some videos to show you. In fact, I will show you some high water movement. If you're watching on the screen right now, a couple minutes in, this is actually worth seeing. These are time-lapse videos, so I'll just put it on the screen as we're moving right now. This video shows you how fast water moves. As you see right now, the water is actually up. It went up 27 feet in 45 minutes. Most of you cannot fathom what that looks like. I lived backed up against a creek that was maybe 40 feet below the back door of the house. And as you walked out, you would go down a steep grade and you would end up in, let's call it ankle deep water on most days. And then you would see what happens when you actually got water moving in there from upstream. And it would fill up at a rate that was insane. We had a creek that you could jump over, that a child could do a standing broad jump over regularly. And we did. We would dance across the rocks. We would go look for snakes and turtles and all the other kind of things. Clear water that you could see the bottom of. You could poke a stick and you'd only get a couple inches deep in it. And then it would rain, and you would start seeing things like kids' play sets fly past us. We had a trestle bridge that was behind the house that was maybe 25 feet above the ground level when you were standing underneath it. And it would have water get up to the bottom of it. This is a Texas phenomenon. I know it happens in other places. It happened in New Mexico when I lived there as well. It happens in very dry climates. If you guys have never seen stuff like this, then this is foreign to you, and I understand that. But this kind of water rise is not unexpected in this area. It actually is pretty common, and it happens pretty much every season somewhere. The fact that it happened at a child's camp is absolutely devastating, catastrophic. I'll read you a little bit from the CBS story because we might as well get a little context from the national news here. But I also want to say that this is sort of a sadly predictable thing, and it happens when it happens. There are at least 82 people dead, at least 41 more that are declared missing after devastating flash floods slammed the Texas Hill Country, again, just to the west of where I live, and also to the east of me. I'm actually in a pocket that didn't get hit. Over in Georgetown, which is just a few minutes off to my east, there was flooding there, and it smashed through the Guadalupe. Just 700 yards to my west is the San Gabriel River as well, and that went up massively. There's some crazy videos of people flying through on drones. You can see that our streets are completely untouched, and then you go just a little bit further into the woodline where my kids and I have gone and played, and again, ankle deep water got 30 feet and went over the top of the 183 bridges. So if If you guys know the area, you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever gone into like Leander, if you've ever gone into Liberty Hill, places out on Round Mountain were completely washed out. There's an account on X that I follow called Dash. It's documenting ATX, and Jamie was out there showing that people's houses flooded away. None of these are, like, most of them are trailer type houses, and they're all living in places that are obviously floodplains. That's where some people live. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. Okay, water rescues were taking place along the Guadalupe River. I saw a statistic that I was unable to confirm, but apparently a Coast Guard rescue swimmer is now credited with like over 165 saves pulling people out of the water. So God bless the people that went out there and responded. The question was, how do you even help in an emergency like this? And I didn't have a great answer, and I still don't. So when there are opportunities for us to do that, we will. One thing that is happening, which is kind of amazing, is we have a grocery store here in Texas called HEB. And I found this footage right now. What you're seeing is a convoy. I'm going to turn the volume down. A couple of ladies driving next to it. What you're seeing is a disaster relief convoy that headed out to Kerrville and to Comfort, Texas, and some of the other areas that were deeply affected that are not like in the most urban spaces. They're kind of like rural communities, small little kind of pockets of civilization out by Fredericksburg and whatnot in Central Texas. And HEB drove convoys out immediately with groceries and stuff. They have the Texas CSAR groups that went out and were doing it. You've got the Texas National Guard that were deployed and whatever else was available to do it. So there are people that respond. Texas is a place with a big heart, but a lot of people were killed. The one that most people are aware of, and the thing that was really devastating to a lot of us, is little girls who were killed on the riverbanks. This is the Texas Children's Camp. It was called Camp Mystic Christian Camp. Found out that it was not an inexpensive place to go and send your kids for the summer. It looked like it was like $4,300 for the month, and they lost a camp counselor and as many as like 23 or 27 young girls the age of my daughter. It just, all of this stuff makes you realize like you can't protect your babies from everything, but you just believe that when you put them in the right hands of people that are doing decent things and having a Christian summer camp, that they would be safe. And as Garrett and I talked about, Garrett O'Boyle and I had a phone call yesterday. One of the things that's really, really hard if you're a person of faith is to look and go, what part of the plan does this serve? Like, how does this serve your plan, God, to see young baby girls get washed away in a flood? What are you teaching us? And as he said, we're simple people in so much as we can't fathom the plan of God. But man, it's really, really ugly. Apparently there were 750 kids at this camp. This is not the first time that these places have flooded, folks. This is not something that has never happened before. It happened in 2002. It happened in 1987. It happens every 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It happens. It's a Texas thing. And the problem is you have bad internet connectivity out there for sure. Everyone sort of understands that, but we don't have a lack of it. If they had internet, and the odds are this is a day when people would have internet, it's not that these things were not being notified. Apparently the floods washed through that area at like 2:30 in the morning, from what we can tell. Over here in Liberty Hill, I got these. I'll show you. Some of this was making the screenshots. We had a couple 100,000 people see these. I'm holding it up to the screen right now. If you guys are looking, these are the emergency alerts that I got on my phone. It was proximity based. I never opted in as far as I can tell. We started getting emergency alerts on Saturday at 12:01 a.m. I'm going to read you what the alert says because it's actually relevant. And anybody that's saying that we did not, in fact, have access to notifications, that's not particularly honest. It says National Weather Service, emergency alert, a flash flood warning is in effect in the area until 3 a.m. Central Time. That would have been 3 a.m. on Saturday. It says it's a dangerous and life-threatening situation. Do not attempt to travel unless you're fleeing an area subject to flooding or under an evacuation order. We got another one at 2 a.m. We got another one at 2:48 a.m., extending it into the morning. We got another one at 9:16 a.m., extending it into the afternoon. We got another one at 12:23 on Saturday, extending it to 3. We got another one at 3, extending it to 6. Yesterday, we got another one as well. These are not, so people who understand, if you don't live in places like this, if you're not used to severe weather in the same way that we deal with it here in Texas, it is really specific. I'm going to show you another video, which is pretty intense. This is showing a time-lapse video of the, I think this is the South Fork of the Guadalupe flooding. And so it's time-lapse, so it's sped up, but you guys are seeing how fast that water comes up. It comes up incredibly fast. They did have In my case, 15 minutes warning from the time that the alert showed up to the time that the rain actually began. That was after everything was super saturated, so you were probably going to get a pretty fast response. So I'm looking out the window when that happens. But, they had maybe an hour, 2 hours of notifications. These things started happening midnight and onward. It's horrific. It's absolutely terrible. If you don't have the technology to know this kind of stuff, this is a thing that you should know if you live in the floodplains. And if you guys saw the previous slide, it shows that all of that right on the water, these people are susceptible to flooding, period. Nobody expects it to be you. But this is the reason why we talk about preparedness and having a plan. Everybody sort of thinks that they're going to come up with a solution in the moment. The odds are very low. If you haven't rehearsed what the thing is going to be, if you haven't decided how you're going to respond to an active shooter in your church, if you haven't decided what's going to happen if you live in wildfire area and there's a wildfire that is moving in towards your home, if you don't know that water doesn't play and it knocks through everything, as you're seeing on the screen right here, it'll go through bridges, it'll go through homes, it'll take your vehicle, ankle deep, knee-deep water can throw you and take you wherever it wants to go. So if you don't know these kind of things, then you're set up to, kind of hope. If you've not prepared in advance, what your reaction is going to be, then it's not going to be great in the moment. The odds are is that you don't know what to do. But if you're looking at the screen right now and you're seeing how much of this stuff, this is not beautiful, crystal clear, some wave that you get hit with like you do when you go to the ocean and there's nice waters. This is murky, mucky, silt-filled, dirt, debris, sharp objects, paddle boards, people's boats, pieces of their homes, massive tree branches flying through and just getting slammed in, and it does not stop. It is absolutely relentless. If you've never watched through rushing water, I did a couple of camping trips when I was younger, where we did a couple of runs through places in Arkansas where they have big flooding in the Ozarks. And the lowlands, you can die overnight. It will just sweep through and take you out. You'll wake up with a little bit of water in your tent, and a few seconds later, you're in a tent and you can't get out. And if you don't know it, then you're screwed. I've walked through that stuff at waist deep, and you got maybe 50-50 shot if you're a really strong person with a strong core and you're a strong swimmer of getting through to the other side. It's just catastrophic. It's an absolute tragedy. But it's not something that couldn't be understood or predicted, and I don't want people to think that it wasn't something that we could have known about. It's an awful, sad thing, and yet it should be a reminder to you. You don't know what your time is to go. That's true. And you can only prepare for so much, but there are a lot of things that you can prepare for in your own environment. So if you don't have it, my father is in his 70s, and I've watched him hurricane-proof a house, chopping everything down that was nearby with a chainsaw after seeing a hurricane come through when they lived on the Florida coastline. Now he lives in Arizona. I've watched him fireproof his own property. Anything that could burn that gets close enough to the house, they want to create that fire break space. They want to, what they do, call firewise it. You do that. And if you live near the water, the possibility is that you just need an evac plan, whatever that looks like. It's horrible. And like I said, we've got a family member right now whose all their worldly goods are destroyed. The water went up to their house and was 6 feet high inside the house. It was a one-story dwelling. The roof came in because of it. The amount of water that came down was catastrophic. I'm not going to belabor this any longer, but the fact of the matter is these things happen. It is not a political event, and anybody that is trying to dunk on anybody else, all the stuff and all the cuts that have gone on, most of them have not even taken place yet, and certainly not the cuts that they're crying about with Noah. There were plenty of people giving plenty of warning. The fact of the matter is, if you live in this area, which I've lived off and on in Texas for a huge chunk of my life, you get watches and warnings all the time for severe weather. Flash flood watches, flash flood warnings. If you don't know the difference, by the way, if you live in a place that doesn't have that, I'll just clear it real quick. When you're seeing some news coverage, a flash flood watch, a tornado watch, a severe weather watch, hurricane, thunderstorm, whatever, the watch means that the conditions exist such that it could happen right in front of you. But it doesn't mean that they've actually witnessed the thing that they're talking about. A warning means that there's a funnel cloud on the ground, that there is a wall of water coming your way. It is imminent or already en route, because it's not just the conditions, but it actually has happened. And so we got warnings on those phones that I just put in the Faraday bag. We got warnings about it. It wasn't like, it might happen. It's like, it's happening right now. But again, if you don't have connectivity, then you don't know. If you don't have a radio on listening, the only sad thing for me was those warnings came in around midnight, and there were fireworks being blasted off all over this state until well after 11. So maybe people went to sleep too soon or whatever, and we can't second guess it. We'll find out more. At the end of the day, we pray for their families, pray for their loss, and pray to understand what it is, because it's really freaking hard. And in the meantime, we've got national news that is distracting us on every level, because there's a ton of crazy things that are happening all at once. Like I almost wish that I didn't skip shows, but at the same time, like, we needed a break away from it. And a good time to kind of reflect and remind you. I'm going to bring some things back into focus, since I had some time to reflect over the 4th of July, and hopefully we'll have a little historical perspective. Before we do that, let's say hi to the folks over at Silent. Speaking of Faraday bags, this is one way to not get that message on your phone. So you guys, there's times when you want to be out of touch, like I am right now. Put the phone in the bag. There's times when you might not want that. You might want your alerts on, particularly if there's severe weather, and you got to make your own decisions on this stuff. If you haven't thought about protecting yourself from the government, big tech, corporate America, criminals, etc., if you want to have privacy on your own device, and you should control it, you can do so with Faraday products from my friends over at Silent. They make awesome stuff. If you want something that's going to keep your electronics safe in the rain, I've got their waterproof bag back here. A dry bag would be pretty nice if all of your, let's say you could only grab one thing, and that thing was going to go out in a rainstorm. You might want a Faraday thing that's not going to get struck with lightning. It's not going to have a surge that's going to take it out, and it might be safe from all the water around you. Silence Faraday products block all incoming and outgoing signals, so no one's going to wipe your device from outside or access your stuff. It's going to keep you safe and invisible from the outside world, including all those people mentioned, tech and government and criminals and so on. They actually work, which is a big deal. A lot of these products do not. They're made cheaply. That's not the case with Silence. You're not paying for the cheapest thing out there. You're paying for something that works. And if you want a made in America one, you can even pay a premium and get one that's made here in the US, especially if you're a law enforcement or military organization. Their RF signal blocking technology gives you peace of mind that your data's not going out in the wrong hands. You just place your device inside and you close it, and you're safeguarded from unauthorized access. The website is silent.com/Kyle. Again, that's SLNT.com/Kyle. SLNT is silent without the vowels.com/Kyle. And the promo code Kyle will save you 15%. You'll get free shipping on qualified orders. Check out that E3 Everyday Backpack, because it gives you not just a great bag, and it's a really comfortable, nice, smart, well laid out bag. I've got mine sitting right behind me with all my streaming gear, which we may go walk down and check some stuff out later today. But it also gives you 2 different sleeves to protect your phone and then your laptop and tablets and so on in the back. So you can actually break the stuff up and they don't have to be connected together. You're getting 3 products in one. SLNT.com/KYLE. Again, save yourself 15%, and you get free shipping with the right stuff on there. Let's do a little retrospective if we can, because a lot of what happened in the last couple of days has reminded me, especially the 4th of July stuff, is like how recently so many Americans ceded their freedom. They wanted to have someone else run their version of liberty. They wanted permission to do things that we have inalienable and God-given rights to do. That reliance on government is a terrible instinct. And a lot of Americans failed that test. We were given a test in 2020, so-called 2 weeks to slow the spread, right? And then the next year, we had tyrants come in. The Biden administration came in and told you that you couldn't even see loved ones who were dying. And how many people went along with it and thought they had no choices? As someone who used to work in a hospital, if you guys don't know, you have the power in those places. They work for you. You don't get permission from your doctor whether or not you're going to stand up or go somewhere. You decide whether or not whatever they're doing is acceptable, and you can leave if you want to leave. I used to see people that would ask me for permission if they could leave the ER when they didn't want to be there anymore. And the answer is, be a grown-up and take responsibility. Now, yeah, you're going to sign a form that says that you walked out against medical advice and you're going to be responsible for your own decisions, but you can do that. Or you can listen to guys like this marshmallow-brained human Roomba who told you that you couldn't even gather with your friends outdoors. And again, a huge chunk of Americans bought into this. As a nation, we collectively failed. So this 4th of July was kind of dark for me, reminded that this was only a couple years ago, 4 short years ago, and this guy was the reason why I'm sitting here in front of you today. It's yet another example of I don't understand God's plan. It's far too complex for me, but here we are talking about it. Here's Joe Biden telling you that maybe if you do the right thing and you roll up your sleeve and go get a vaccine that they are telling you must get, then maybe you can hang out with your neighbors, as though they have a say in this.
I need you to get vaccinated when it's your turn and when you can find an opportunity. And to help your family, your friends, your neighbors get vaccinated as well. Because here's the point. If we do all this if we do our part, if we do this together, by July the 4th, there's a good chance you, your families and friends will be able to get together in your backyard or in your neighborhood and have a cookout or a barbecue and celebrate Independence Day. That doesn't mean large events with lots of people together, but it does mean small groups will be able to get together.
How many people paid 6, 7, 8.5% on fireworks to celebrate the victory in a war that was fought over a 2% tax? I did what Steve Friend has been doing for years. I read the Declaration of Independence to my kids. And if you haven't read it recently, even if you've read it in the past, you should go back and reread the Declaration of Independence. Some of the grievances that our founding fathers were griping about, they seem petty compared to the things that we've accepted as default positions in America today. And the COVID stuff is really one of those that brings it into stark relief for me. As I sat there and read that, I went like, good God. You know, people were saying, well, at least they're not quartering soldiers. I want you to go read an article that Steve Friend wrote about the Quartering Act and the violation of the Third Amendment that the FISA does, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance and the 702 coverage that happens of Americans. So much of this comes back to my ex-girlfriend, which is the affectionate way that we talk about the FBI. The violations of the Bill of Rights are significant. Most of my whistleblower activities were bringing forward information, talking about a violation of the First Amendment. Your ability to decide for yourself, to gather and petition a redress of grievances, to have freedom of the press, even press that I don't like. I'm not a big fan of James O'Keefe, but he has a right to be press. He's not even that bright. Some of the things he says are very dumb. Like he said, there's explicit protections for reporters. No, there's not. There's just a forbidding of the American Congress from making laws that infringe on the freedoms of the press. They can't legislate it. So he doesn't quite understand it, but he's still not wrong that there should be free press. There should be free association. There should be free religion. You should be able to go to church. And they told you that you couldn't. And a lot of you knew that you couldn't go. In fact, mostly, I don't even blame you. I blame your churches that shut down, including my own. I thought I might never go back to a Catholic church again because they shut down for that they spaced out the pews and made everybody like little families wear masks to come in. Screw that. And at the end of the day, do they have any sort of reflection to go back and say, you know what, we really effed up. We really screwed up America and we owe everybody a national apology? No. The people on the political left that marched that out, those mandates, I'm not a big fan of the Operation Warp Speed and the way that Trump rolled it out. I'm sure all the guys, you know what I do think? I've never actually asked him, but I'm pretty confident that Kash Patel was a guy who got the vax. I know Dan Bongino said he regretted it, but he got it too, right? Why did Kash get it? Because he's a follower of Donald Trump, always referred to him with me as the boss, never said Trump, always said the boss, capital B, you could tell, both in text and in verbal. They had that same attitude, that sort of like worship of power, and I should have known. I guess I should have known. Garrett O'Boyle and I talked about it the other day on a private conversation, but one of the things that really should have alerted me, I think I've said it here on this podcast before, one of the major reasons I should have known that there was a problem with a guy like Kash Patel was that he said, I could be the CIA director or the FBI director. Either one would be good for me. And those are not the same agency. They're not the same skill set. They do not make sense that the same person would do it. So a lot of this stuff came down to just following power, following whatever was convenient, following orders, etc. Gavin Newsom was a big fan of doing that. He was a great hypocrite with the French laundry scandal, the fact that he was out eating dinner while he was ordering people to stay away from their jobs, but he was going to very fancy, incredibly expensive meals. And he did a podcast with Sanjay Gupta, who I am not a big fan of, a CNN doctor, TV doctor. And what they say in this clip is actually fairly stunning. They're praising the COVID shots, and they're lamenting the communication as though they didn't get it through to people enough. Our problem was that we just didn't understand hard enough, even though at this point, I'm fairly confident those of us who refused it are all vindicated, that the masking was made up, the distances were made up. The vaccine didn't do what vaccines have always done, which is keep you guys, there was a study, many of you may not know this, I'm just kind of waxing poetic here, but there was a study that was done in the NHL, it's hockey players. And it was a real world study of the movement of viruses through vaccinated people. If you had the mumps vaccine, You didn't get symptoms, but you did carry the virus. You just didn't actually experience mumps. And then there were guys that got the mumps that hadn't been vaccinated against it. So in reality, that's the way things were supposed to work. That's what we were always led to believe. If you were vaccinated against it, your body would see the pathogen, know that it was a pathogen, fight the pathogen, and keep the disease. And we got so sick. How many people became virologists overnight with the COVID stuff, right? The simple A&P solution is that there is a difference between the pathogen, whether it be a bacteria, whether it be a fungus, whether it be a virus, and then the disease, which are the list of symptoms that you suffer when that pathogen does what it does. In theory, a COVID vaccine should have allowed you to become infected with SARS-CoV-2, but stopped the symptoms of COVID-19, which was the suite of symptoms that you got when you were actually affected by that virus. In reality, you got both. You got the virus and you got the symptoms. It didn't do anything that anyone could say. And then they have this fake nonsense saying, well, it saved a lot of people. They had a lot less of an intense experience, which nobody can document because you can't do it side by side with the same person. Here's Gupta saying that the real problem was communication. And it's going to go down in the history books as one of the great things. It is going to go down in the history books as one of the worst con jobs ever pulled out on a large scale population, including the entire world.
I think, when textbooks are written about scientific achievements, the idea that they were able to create a vaccine essentially in 9 months and be able to, protect so many people. There's a lot of people who think they don't work. They do work. I mean, if you looked at the data, California or the country as a whole, who was in the hospital during the huge sort of swings in COVID, it was primarily people who were not vaccinated. So it was helping protect against illness and death. What I think was unfortunate, frankly, and this was a communications problem, was that they seemed to also intimate that it would protect you from getting COVID at all, from carrying it. And there was not great evidence behind that. And, we reported as such that you don't have great evidence that shows that. When you have a vaccine that's protecting it against illness, it's usually protecting in your lower respiratory, in your lungs. So you're not getting that really, really sort of a deep illness, but you might still have it in your mucosa, in your mouth, in your nose, in your upper airway. So you could potentially still be carrying it and still potentially spread it.
All of what he's saying is excuses that don't make any sense. By the way, he comes to conclusions that cannot actually be determined. Do you remember they were telling us that it was only the unvaccinated that were getting sick? It's probably because the people that were killed off in the early waves, it's like burning through a forest fire and you get all the dead wood burned off. How many old, sick, fat people? I'm not trying to be crude. I'm just saying that those were the comorbidity factors. People that had hypertension and diabetes, heart disease, and so on. People that had multiple comorbidities were the ones that died right away. It was really obvious to anybody watching the stats. Like, okay, well, the people that are dying overwhelmingly, my numbers were over a certain age bracket and they were under a certain fitness level. And then, of course, the only thing that was left over were certain people. And so, of course, that was going to make up the list of people who were hospitalized and so on. Anyway, not an honest broker of information, and pretty obvious that was going on. It's pretty incredible that you see this stuff. How do we end up in a country where we ceded our liberty to guys like Joe Biden, who was barely even sentient on his best days, who was telling you whether or not you could be with a family member as they died, and we accepted it writ large and said, well, that's what they said. How did we go from a country that threw tea in the harbor and picked a fight with the world's most dangerous navy and the largest military at the time to a bunch of people that hid in their house from what was essentially a glorified flu for most of us that got it? How did that happen? I think that the dumbing down of America is now complete. That's what I think. This is Caitlin Bennett, I think is her name. She does Liberty Hangout. She's interviewing people on the beach on the 4th of July. This scares the ever-loving crap out of me. These are the people that vote next to you. So for every one of you that is informed, that is educated, that understands things, that has a discerning mind, you're a skeptic, you question both the legitimacy and the source of the information, you make decisions based on all the available data and also understanding what you lack in data. Those kind of people, if you're one of those discerning critical types, you are such a rare minority. You are massively outnumbered by these people. And if you don't believe me, you can actually go and just ask people this in your grocery store line, You can ask people this. I do it all the time. I tell people stuff and they look at me like I'm insane. I go to Catholic Mass, have people ask me what I do for a living, have to kind of get into the weird backstory because there's not a lot of grown-up men that are doing podcasts at my age. It's just not a thing people can do for a living generally. Pretty uncommon. It's an interesting thing to explain. And I tell people I used to have a real job, but then I did this stuff. And when I explained, did you hear anything about what the FBI has been up to in the last couple of years, any of the negative press? It's maybe one in 3. 1 in 4 people know what I'm talking about. The vast majority of them have no idea, and they're Catholics. Catholics who my former agency was looking at specifically, at least one group of them, and discriminating, not because they were worried about Latin Mass, but because they were worried about people who had traditional conservative views, which should be almost every Christian in this country, if they actually follow doctrine of whatever denomination you're involved in. They were all at risk with the stuff that the Bureau was doing. Again, First Amendment, simple stuff. Listen to these women being interviewed. I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's far more sad. Also, look at the obesity rates in young people. They're younger than me. They're younger than my wife, who's had 4 children, and they are significantly less healthy looking than we were at that age. We've wrecked. We have a fat, lazy, and stupid population, and they can all vote. That's really a mean way to say it, but it's true.
Who did we gain our independence from?
What? George Washington?
What year did we gain our independence from Great Britain?
In 1492.
What was the name of the war that won us our independence?
The Civil War? World War II. One. I don't know. I didn't pay attention in history.
Who won the Revolutionary War?
South.
Who was the first president of the United States? How many letter A's are in the word independence?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know how to spell that. So I'm gonna say 3.
AENDANCE.
Oh, you're the English teacher. I'm so embarrassed.
What do Americans celebrate on the 4th of July?
Is that troubling to anybody else? It's troubling to me. It's sad. One of them was an English teacher. She couldn't spell a word that she's probably seen 100 times. Like spelling, yeah, I get it. We're all lazier on that. Kind of tells you a lot about where people are at right now. There wasn't a single person there. I'm sure there were. I'm sure there were some people that were good at giving a historical perspective. But I've had this experience in my own family. My baby sister, who I don't talk to all that often, she threw herself out of my house because Trump got elected. It was my fault. My baby sister told me she couldn't tell me even what decade the United States participated in the last wars in the 20th century. She couldn't tell me what decade World War I happened, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and I think she got the Iraq War because she lived through it, the first one, Gulf Storm. That's shocking. These people are teaching our kids. She's working on a PhD right now. She has a master's degree. She handles people's lives in her hand in the medical field every single day. Isn't that crazy? It blows my freaking mind. How do you not have a concept of like the historical timeline under which you exist? But it makes it a lot easier to sell really, really bad ideas. And the same people that have zero ability to carry out violence, that have zero ability to enact the things like the Joe Biden types, Joe couldn't make anybody do anything at all. They're 100% reliant on powerful, strong men who are capable of violence. Men who I used to work with. Men who look like me or Steve Friend or Garrett O'Boyle or Marcus Allen or George Hill. Fit, capable of violence, skilled at using firearms, have a brain about them, and most of those people turned around and they just said, I'm going to keep my job. I'm going to do what I'm told. I'm not going to push back. I'm not going to ask too many questions. I do want to keep my paycheck. So if it means violating people's fundamental God-given rights as guaranteed by our Constitution, that constitutional leash of the Bill of Rights that the Anti-Federalists established for us, making sure that our government would never overrun its borders, would never run over the riverbanks. We got flooded, 100%. We had all of this government over the years. It slowly rose, and then it rose very, very quickly. Kind of like some of those videos I was showing you. It's a very unfortunate analogy to be able to recognize. And we got people like this. This woman is a teacher. She's apparently a teacher in Washington State. I imagine she won't be very long recording stuff like this. I follow a woman named Seraphin. She put this out there, did some research on this lady. This is a heavy-set, younger than me teacher requesting and hoping and smiling about the possible assassination of a sitting U.S. president because she's a moron and she doesn't even know what sort of turmoil that would throw this country into. That is how we got here. This lady can vote and her vote counts just as much as yours.
I hear they're holding a ceremony so that he can sign this big, beautiful bill into law. Do you think it's going to be outside? No, they wouldn't. But like on the 4th of July, be a cool time to do it. If anyone's like on the fence, we would support you. 100%. That'd be real nice. I hear they're holding a...
Yuck. Everything about that is yuck. Physically yuck, audio, gross, bad idea theater is what I used to call it when I was in the military. You watch guys make terrible decisions. She went out there and taped that with her actual face. How crazy is that? So, in light of that, you've got this this movement. This big, beautiful bill was passed. I'll show you some reactions to it. People keep acting like Donald Trump is this sort of like fascist, terrible dictator guy. And there continues to be no evidence of it. There's none. They cry about it. They want him assassinated over it. And in the meantime, the first thing that happens right after they sign this bill into law is like he turns around and moderates. Every time he moderates. I'm going to keep saying it. Donald Trump is not conservative. I had some guy yell at me the other day and he was saying something about how he's a Trumpian hardcore conservative. That's a moron. That's a stupid person who doesn't know what conservative means. Donald Trump is a 90s Democrat, which is infinitely preferable to a today Democrat, 100%, but not conservative. Not even the same species. He's actually closer to this bleeding heart crying former Ranger Battalion guy. This is Representative Jason Crow of Colorado, crying about the people that are in his state that are breaking the law and are here illegally. They are taking things from you. They're eating up resources in schools and in hospitals, public assistance and benefits and so on with no right to it. And he's crying about it. That's how he ended up. This is a man theoretically capable of violence. This is the kind of guys that are the most scary and dangerous to me.
I've been talking to my constituents. I've been reading their letters, the fear, the anxiety. I mean, there are literally people that I'm talking to that I represent, Pam, who don't know if they're going to literally survive this. That can't pay for their health care bills, that have disabled children, and the coverage for these disabled children, the care that they need to be able to work, to be able to survive, to be able to get basic care is going to go away. This is the most brutal thing I have ever seen in my time in public office.
I don't have health care coverage. I haven't had health care coverage since Joe Biden stripped me and my family of it and our jobs, because we didn't go and agree to their mandate of something that went against the core of our religious liberties in this country. I haven't had that. Nobody cried about it. Remember, every single person crying about Medicaid being taken away from illegal aliens that have broken Title VIII laws in the United States, in the same Congress that a-hole represents his constituents, the ones who actually are allowed to vote, not the illegals that are here. The same people that cry about those folks losing their medical benefits are the ones that cheered about you losing your kids or your freedom because you didn't comply with the COVID mandates. What kind of messed up country are we right now? And anybody who would listen to them is insane. And I say that like you are doing things that are illogical. They make no sense. They defy rationality. You are following a footsteps of things that do not even agree internally. Leftist logic is 100% outside of the bounds of reality. You can't follow it and think that it makes sense. Real simple stuff. Who should own guns? Well, people shouldn't own guns. Only the government should own guns. It's like, okay, cool. Do you trust the cops? No, defund the police. I think that these people must wake up with headaches every single day, or they just don't think at all, which seems more likely. Here is a man dressed up as a woman. This is how ridiculous we are right now. Representative from Delaware, Tim, aka Sarah McBride, talking about something. You guys know what's going to come right after this, so I'll play this for you. We will get to the Epstein stuff. I started with it because it's nothing. The answer is we got nothing. I will play you some back-to-back fun clips letting us know how much this was set up for nothing. and how they move the goalpost. But first, Sarah McBride letting you know what will happen if you do pass the big, beautiful bill that was passed and I'm not a fan of. Again, you can be against that bill because it doesn't go far enough to protect people, and you could be against that bill because it's antithetical to American liberty to extend debt and to basically sell out our kids' futures. There's two reasons. One of them is proper. One of them just means that you voted the same way. Here's Sarah, aka Timmy.
Do they even care? Every yes vote shows very clearly that they don't. This bill is trickle-down cruelty, and people will die because of it.
People need kidneys, it's sad but decreed, yet this senator's hoarding one more than she needs. I offer this bill and I hope you'll vote aye, unless of course you just want people to die. Traffic deaths have many crying with fear, over 30,000 people are dying each year. This modest change I propose must be applied, unless of course you just want people to die. Alcohol deaths are exceeding comparisons, black people, white people, Native Americans. We need to ban alcohol, it can't be denied, unless of course you just want people to die. Crossing the street is incredibly tough. People look left and right, but rarely look up. My bill would mandate that.
Yeah, people will die. Like they actually say it. Like they're memes of themselves. It's fantastic. I'm glad I keep this little supercut that I made. By the way, that's a 2-minute or 3-minute song, but I cut it down to make it 40 seconds for what we do here. Our purposes are served with the way that it wants. There's a crying over on MSNBC on how ICE massive cash infusion is poised to transform America. This is the thing that these people are crying about. The Republicans gave $45 billion to ICE to help detain thousands of illegal immigrants. Of course, they're aliens, but I'm reading the headline as it's written. And another $100 billion to further supercharge Trump's mass deportations, which have been fairly weak thus far. We're being told that members of the FBI that are being assigned to these task force going out and looking for bad guys, looking for criminal aliens, it's problematic because they're expected to get 45 illegal alien arrests a day on these squads, and they're coming back with like 5 and 7. They're getting a fraction of what was expected. I don't know that money's going to solve the problem. You're going to have to step up personnel. You're going to have to step up the intel quota. Why is the entire FBI intel division not just doing this? I'll tell you why. It's the same reason why we just got this Epstein thing. Because it turns out that guy that is now number 2 over there that actually runs the FBI was right about something. Personnel is policy. And if you don't change your personnel, then the policies that they think are the most useful, they're going to keep subverting everything you're doing. And they did it. And they're going to make you look like a fool. And they're going to continue to do it. So I don't think money at the problem will solve it. We've seen that in the war on poverty, the war on drugs, take your pick. It hasn't worked yet. Money doesn't solve problems unless you have motivated people of goodwill who are going to go out there and enact policy in a meaningful way. However, Hayes Brown, opinion writer for MSNBC, says with a cash infusion of around $150 billion towards immigration enforcement and border security, last week's budget bill, congressional Republicans handed Donald Trump and his administration the resources needed to carry out its mass deportation policy. The intended results are as aggressive and are likely to be transformative. ICE is slated to become the largest law enforcement agency in the country as dozens of new detention centers are springing up to hold hundreds of thousands of illegals, they say immigrants, awaiting expulsion. There's been a huge surge in ICE raids, down from basically nothing where they weren't allowed to do their job under the last president. Now they're actually getting to do the job. There needs to be quite a bit more of it. But the problem is that you've actually got general public consensus saying, yeah, let's do this. And in the meantime, Trump is actually moderating. Here's CNN kind of shocked that the overwhelming majority of Americans are down with deport all illegals, all of them. Why? Because they are taking resources from your children. They are taking resources from your sick parents. They are taking resources from every person that paid into the system because they do not come here legally. Legal aliens should be the most pissed about this stuff. And people who work their ass off to see other people getting what you want, you don't moderate when you're winning. And that's the problem that I continue to see this thing. I'm going to keep pushing back on both sides. I don't mind saying it's wrong. It's wrong to moderate on the absolute policy. The "this is what I voted for" crowd wants everybody thrown out. You don't make exceptions for farm workers and people in hotels. It might be a very, very small number, but it shows a weakness in there. And you don't need weakness when you have the majority. Look at the numbers here that CNN's touting.
Documented immigrants. So we have slightly different questions, but these were all taken within the last month. And there's real uniformity here. That's what I really think you see. You see real uniformity. Deported all immigrants who are here illegally, 55% of the New York Times. Marquette, 64%. CBS News, 57%. ABC News with a slightly different question, 56%. So what you're seeing essentially here is a very clear indication that a majority of Americans, in fact, when they're asked this blunt question, which I believe gets at the underlying feelings, do in fact want to deport all immigrants who are here illegally. There's no arguing with these different numbers because they're all essentially the same across 4 different pollsters.
So if they say yes today-ish, how has that changed over time?
Yeah, this is where I think you get very interesting. And so we'll take a look at that ABC News question in particular, because you can really see that there's been a massive shift from when Trump was first getting into office 8 years ago, right? Deport all undocumented immigrants. You go back to 2015, I'm going to come to your side of the screen, it was 42%. Hello. Go to 2016, it was 36%. Look at where we are now. This was taken at the end of last year, 56%. This is 20 points higher than it was just before Trump got into office the first time. So feelings towards immigration in this country, feelings towards undocumented immigrants and deporting all of them have become considerably more hawkish. And I think that gives Donald Trump much more leverage to go with the American people. And
yeah, it gives him more leverage. So what is he going to do? He's going to soften that stance. It's the exact opposite of what you'd expect. You just got your bill, which I don't like. I don't like how much money we're going to throw at this. But if we're going to throw money at the problem, get 100% results. Go get everybody. Get what they call targets of opportunity. That means you showed up at an MS-13 house, but there's a couple of moms there that are illegal. Get them out too. Oh, they didn't commit any additional crimes. Guess what? They're here illegally. If they're going to work and support themselves, they're going to be doing that illegally. They're going to violate federal law if you are here and you're working under any circumstances and you don't have a visa that says you can work. Get out. The end. And Americans, over 50% agree on both sides of the aisle, which means your side of the aisle, the Trump side of the aisle, says get them all. And then he goes out like the day afterwards and does this.
Tom Homan. And we're working on legislation right now. Susie, right? We're working on legislation right now where farmers, look, they know better. They work with them for years. You had cases where, not here, but just even over the years, where people have worked for on a farm for 14, 15 years, and they get thrown out pretty viciously. And we can't do it. We got to work with the farmers and people that have hotels and leisure properties too. We're going to work with them, and we're going to work very strong and smart. And we're going to put you in charge. We're going to make you responsible. And I think that that's going to make a lot of people happy. Now, serious radical right people, who I also happen to like a lot, they may not be quite as happy, but they'll understand, won't they? Do you think so? Madam Secretary, look at you with a white hat on. Do you think they'll understand that you're the one that brought this whole situation up?
Is that a win? All of this stuff, yeah, of course, I see you guys in the chat out there talking about it. He's got hotels, of course. People who have leisure properties. Who are we talking about? Oh, like the Trump group. Got it. It looks terrible to do that. He's got friends that I'm sure that have huge agricultural capabilities. If you have people who've come back to you year after year illegally, there already is a program for exchange farm workers. It's called the Migrant Visa Program. You can be a migrant worker. The bill also initially set out to charge a 5% remittance. Do you guys know this? There was going to be a tax on remittances so that any money that you earned in the United States that you wanted to send home to your parent company, you live like a tenement housed immigrant from the early 1900s, where, I mean, we would see 25 people living in a 3-bedroom house, maybe more, regularly. And they'd all be working construction and doing illegal crap. So you'd see that. What are they doing with their money? They're sending it back to their gangs. They're sending it back to their family members in another country, El Salvador, Guatemala, Panama, Nicaragua, Mexico, Venezuela, whatever. Doesn't matter. There was supposed to be a 5% remittance tax, which made it a little bit more expensive to send U.S. currency outside the United States. Earned here, should stay here, probably not being taxed at a normal rate anyway because they're working under the table or they're working illegally under some situation. Tax the remittance. And we lost ground on that too. So the final bill signed in, which passed the Senate and got through the House, was 1%. So we were going to take 5, made it 1. It's going to result in some money. Won't be felt. Not in the same way. That's hard to stomach for those of you that actually want to see this stuff. And all of this comes down to, at least in my estimation, something my wife and I talk about all the time. Donald Trump seems like he's desperate to still have the people who used to agree with him, the Democrats, like him, despite all evidence that will not happen. They've lost their ever-loving minds. But he doesn't like seeing this stuff, I have to imagine. In a nation growing hostile towards drugs and homelessness, Los Angeles tries harm reduction, as though being gentle and nice to people is going to be the solution. You can't moderate with these people. You can't moderate with law enforcement when it comes to getting people out if that's what you promised, and most Americans agree with you. You can't do it. This is a whole story that CBS did covering about how the people in Los Angeles are going to solve homelessness yet again with more money and compassion. The suicidal nature of compassion is the problem. It's a really bad rap, but there's a safe way to use drugs. It's an overdose protection strategy. And it helps prevent the spread of infectious diseases. You know what stops the spread of infectious diseases? No tolerance. Don't do it. We're not that country. We're not going to leave people to die on the streets. But this suicidal empathy has been tried in places, and you can see what it looks like. The results are horrible. Actually, I'm not going to show it to you today, maybe tomorrow. I've got a video of one of the oldest restaurants in Los Angeles is closing. It's been there since 1908. They were one of the creators of the French dip. Maybe they were the creator of the French dip sandwich, which doesn't mean anything, except that it's a piece of our history that's dead because of shit policies by stupid people that look and say, what we need is even kinder and more gentle, more compassionate things. And that's my argument against the Republican Party in the first place, which continues to lose more slowly and not win. They don't get wins when they're in charge. Why? Why do we, and then God forbid you have any other solution to it. If you think and you propose anything else, and I'm not behind an America party, I actually will just vote candidate to candidate like I always do. I'm not part of any party. But to suggest that you have to do the same thing over and over again, for all of the people that were crying about Elon Musk and his new party idea, their whole thing is like, you're going to split the Republican Party. We just need to recapture it. Why have you not recaptured it already? Why is the Republican Party not reflective of your values now? And the argument, the most simple argument, the Occam's razor reduction is, it actually does represent the values of the actual Republicans who constitute that party. The Susie Wiles, the Pam Bondis, the people that are totally okay with sacrificing integrity and morals simply because it's okay. Do you guys know that Dan Bongino reached out to me and told me that I couldn't attack James O'Keefe when he was out there getting a girl drunk who was half his age? I wasn't supposed to do that because it's bad for the movement. I had other big name influencers and people whose names you recognize, household names that you've spent money with, or you've bought their products or consumed their media. You've listened to them, you've gotten their thoughts in your head and you believe them. And those people said, if you're a truth teller, you can do it as long as you don't upset the apple cart, because there's a lot of money to scam people out of their good feelings. They want to be part of a team, even if that team is losing. When Dan asked me to stop going after something, that we all needed to come together and make sure that Donald Trump got elected, this goes back to March, April of 2024. I said, what's your plan? That was my response. What is your plan? And he said, we just can't do this. We have to just come together. That's not a flippant plan. I said, let me know when you have one. That's the last time that we ever spoke. Period. Because I care about principles and results. I actually believe the thing that Dan said that he believed, which is that I think the do matters. I actually think that principles are more important than personnel. And I actually think that principles will dictate the actions that you should take. It'd be nice if some other people in the administration actually did too. Here's Pam Bondi. You guys remember we were going to get some Epstein files. This is what that sounded like.
Yeah, I saw your appearance at CPAC with Ben and with Ted Cruz. And one of the things that you alluded to, and this is something Donald Trump has talked about, the DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, we'll check.
That's called bullshit. That is pure 100% field grade BS. The Miami Herald covered this in May. It's been nearly 70 days since Attorney General Pam Bondi promised the public release of the Epstein files in the Epstein case. It took a skeptical remark from a top Republican congressman to force her to explain why she hasn't filed through. We're going to get to what that is in a second. Let's do the second claim. It's not her fault. The files were on her desk, but she hadn't looked at them, as she just said on that Fox hit. When she did look at them, she found that there wasn't very much of it. So she had to go to a source. This is the top law enforcement official in the United States of America, the person that runs the DOJ, which ostensibly runs the FBI, the DEA, it runs the ATF, it runs the Bureau of Prisons, right? It runs all of it. The Marshal Service. It also runs the DOJ. The head of the DOJ runs the DOJ. What are the DOJ entities? They're all out there in districts where the federal courts are. And so you have the United States Attorney for fill-in-the-blank district, like the United States Attorney for the Western District of Texas, the United States Attorney for the Northern District of California, the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, and of course, that one that we're all going to make fun of, but still works for the Attorney General, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. This clip is so stupidly disingenuous, and we pointed it out at the time. She's acting like it's some autonomous entity that she's not the flippin' boss of. If you're the Attorney General, you're in charge of the Southern District of New York. And if they are not working for you, personnel is policy, total personnel warfare, you must get rid of the people that are working against your agenda. These are things that these people walked in on. They did so many podcasts talking about this stuff. You've got to get rid of the folks that are part of the deep state or the administrative state. How do they not know this? This is a woman blaming people who work for her for hiding files from her, and she had to get a source. That source is her employee. And you know, I don't know how dumb you have to be able to take this, but I imagine it's the same level of dumb that you would threaten the President of the United States on TikTok, or you would think that the United States fought George Washington for independence. Maybe that's how dumb you have to be, like those women that were standing there on the beach with Caitlin Bennett.
We all did. And the FBI handed over a couple hundred pages of documents. But, you know, Sean, I gave them a deadline of Friday at 8 a.m. to get us everything. And a source had told me where the documents were being kept. Southern District of New York, shock. So we got them all by, hopefully all of them, Friday at 8 a.m., thousands of pages of documents. I have the FBI going through them, and Kash is also, now that we have Kash here, it's a game changer, of course, and Kash is going to, Director Patel, is going to get us a detailed report as to why the FBI withheld all of those documents.
Okay, I want to be clear, because I think people got frustrated because they were expecting more. You were expecting more, and you didn't find out less than 24 hours before the release. You got a whistleblower that confirmed that there were way more documents that they were supposed to turn over, and then you found out just before that.
Well, sure. And you're looking at these documents going, these aren't all the Epstein files. You know, there were flight logs, there were names and victims' names. And we're going, where's the rest of the stuff? And that's what the FBI had turned over to us. And so a source said, whoa, all this evidence is sitting in the Southern District of New York. Yep. So based on that, I gave them the deadline, Friday at 8, a truckload of evidence arrived. It's now in the possession of the FBI. Kash is going to get me and himself, really, a detailed report as to why all these documents and evidence had been withheld. And, you know, we're going to go through it as fast as we can, but go through it very cautiously to protect all the victims of Epstein.
Zero real claims, nothing that's real. Sean Hannity doing typical Sean Hannity, running cover for the administrative state. Making apologies for a group that didn't even need the apologies yet, setting up the future apologies so that the apologies could continue, because he is an apologist for things that he either doesn't understand, which is possible, I don't know how smart he is, or he's totally just locked in on the same nonsense that Bongino told me. We got to just come together and defend this group. We got to defend our people because they have the ring of power right now. truckload of documents. Do you know how dumb that sounds to somebody who's actually worked in law enforcement? Any of you that have been out there and worked on any cases in law enforcement, you know how stupid this is. Truckload of documents. They brought the evidence was sitting at the attorney's office. Why? Was there about to be a flippant trial? Did they sign out all of the evidence and store it at the Southern District of New York instead of at the FBI field office where evidence is stored? Why? How much of the evidence was like physical hard drives and how much of it was electronic information? The FBI has very specific protocols for storing documents and evidence, and all of them would be digitally available on the FBI's servers. They call them, they're addendums you can add to every FBI case file. 1As is what they call them. 1Bs, 1Cs. There's different ways that you can attach certain types of information. All of the physical information, all of the documents would have been scanned in and accessible from FBI Sentinel, which is their computer system. This is utter shoveled nonsense. But they're going to go through them. Remember, Kash is a game changer. He's a game changer, Director Patel. That's what she said. All of this stuff has been, how far can we make you guys forget about it? And let me make this assertion right now. This will be my simple assertion to you. They, Bondi, Patel, Bongino, Trump for his part, they would have been better off pretending that they never heard another question about Jeffrey Epstein and that they didn't know what you were talking about and try to run the clock out. That would have been a better tactic than this. It would have been an infinitely better tactic to act like they didn't even remember that it was a problem because they're so busy doing really important stuff. That would have been smarter than this. This is a faceplant in front of the American people because we all saw this. This is Joe Rogan, a man with the biggest audience on the planet, asking Patel about it. And what does he do? Appeal to authority. Well, does this look like the kind of guy that would do that to you? Do I look like the kind of guy that would lie to you? Would I ever do that? No. Right when his boss is saying, yeah, there's tens of thousands of documents, tens of thousands of videos, tens of thousands of hours of children being abused, 0 people doing the abuse except Jeffrey Epstein. He was just one sick puppy that nonstop did this, and he had buddies that were rich and powerful, but nobody knows who they are. There's no list, so we can't find a list based on money or flight logs or interviews or discussing what was going on or surveillance footage or any of the things that should be there, which is clearly absurd. It's the dumbest possible way to cover this story and try to cover it up.
Again, logical play out. If there was a video of some guy or gal committing felonies on an island and I'm in charge, don't you think you'd see it?
Tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn. And there are hundreds of victims. And no one victim will ever get released. It's just the volume, and that's what they're going through right now. The FBI is diligently going.
What was that again?
Again, logical play out. If there was a video of some guy doing something, and this guy, Kash Patel, who's in charge of the FBI, who's an unmarried 40-something-year-old Indian man. How many unmarried Indian men do you guys know of? Do you know of any? It's kind of a cultural thing. I'm just going to ask some questions out there that some of you should be asking if you haven't done it before. He's an unmarried, single, 40-something-year-old Indian man. He has no children. You know how much it must mean to him. Children. How many of you can say that your life changed dramatically when you had kids and your understanding and your empathy for babies, for young children changed, that you are now more likely to throw your life away for someone else's children because you have your own and you know what that means? It's certainly the case for me. And it's definitely the case for my friends who have talked about becoming fathers. Mothers, think about that too. Who is this guy, you know? Because he snowed me. I believed he was legit. Do you know the thing? Kash Patel actually offered me money in November of 2022. Dan Bongino connected us. And he offered me $10,000. Really, really generous, by the way. Super nice thing to do. The Fight with Kash Foundation was going to pay me money. I got the phone call. I was standing at a playground with my kids in Payson, Arizona, talking to a nurse not long afterwards who converted to Christianity, converted to Catholicism. Might be listening to us today. And Kash said, I got your number from Dan Bongino, and I want to write you a check and help your family out. Do you know what my first response is? I told this to Garrett too. I'm not like
very many people apparently, but it does seem like the thing that normal people would do. I just think this is what people would do. We hadn't had a paycheck since June. So June, July, August, September, October, November. We're 6 months with no pay. I'm living at my parents' house as a 41 or a 42-year-old guy, whatever it was, 41-year-old guy with 3 kids, quietly without anybody knowing. We had another one on the way. And he said, I'd like to cut you a check for $10,000. And I said, there's got to be someone who needs it more than me. I probably said that to him 4 or 5 times. And that's not to say that I'm so honorable. I'm just saying that I look around and I see that there's bigger need than me, a lot bigger need than me. And there was then. And he said, well, I don't know them. I know about you and I want to cut you a check. I need you to let me do that. Will you let me send you a check? And so we took it. I said, the only condition is that you let me like connect you with my friends. Will you help them too? And he says, yeah, I'm going to help all your friends. And he did. He helped Steve, sent them some money, helped Garrett, sent them some money. So I think I was actually snowed under pretty honest pretenses. I got a promise in September of 2022, just a couple months before that, from this guy. And he told me that he was not going to let my story drop, that the issues that we were talking about, the FBI infringing on civil liberties, the FBI going after people for religion and for press and for assembly, for politics, that the FBI that I worked for, that the face of that problem needed a real American human being face, and that they needed me to come forward and speak about it. He said it on his podcast numerous times. I'll direct you over to our Rumble channel if you haven't seen it before. And I said, I understand everybody needs clicks. I got to be real careful about who I put my life in the hands of. And Dan Bongino told me, I will not let your story drop. I'm going to carry it forward. It's not about money for me. It's about what's right. I'm going to carry this forward. He used the words like an activist. And he was right. He actually promoted my story like an activist. Right up until I disagreed with the movement. Right up until I upset James O'Keefe. Or told someone who was never an FBI agent, who donated damn near $200,000 hard money to Democrats, including while Trump was in office, including while she was writing a book about Donald Trump. He sided with Julie Kelly. And Julie Kelly told you there were going to be no Epstein files. So you know who's got the ear of this guy. This guy told me he wasn't going to let our story drop. And I believed him too, so shame on me. But you know what? It was pretty convincing. A lot of you that listened to the show for a long time also remember this. Here's Dan Bongino versus Dan Bongino.
Listen, that Jeffrey Epstein story is a big deal. Please do not let that story go. Keep your eye on this. Catherine Rumler, we need to keep the heat on this case, folks. There are a lot of people who are knee deep in the Washington swamp who are not telling you the truth about serious allegations out there that Epstein may have had video and audio of people out there doing things they shouldn't have been doing. And you should be asking yourself the question, how is it that all these people, the CIA director, the Obama fixer, Bill Clinton, all intersected paths with Jeffrey Epstein? Jeffrey Epstein isn't with us anymore, and nobody seems to want to talk about it. Outside of a few entrepreneurial media outlets saying, hey, this is a big deal.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
Got it. He killed himself. Maybe so. Maybe he did. But I feel pretty uncomfortable with the fact that we're going to look at a guy like Sean Hannity to be the person that's going to help you deliver that message. That didn't go over very well, the Maria Bartiromo interview, the Big Nugget interview. So he went back again a couple days later. By the way, he's booked another one of these things. And all the claims that I see of what Dan Bongino's been saying about what he's been doing at the FBI, I can debunk almost all of them. I'll do it on Twitter with a long thread at some point. It's not that hard to do, it turns out. It's actually not, because most of the stuff he's saying, if you don't know what the FBI is, it's really easy. And most of you Americans don't know. You just don't know. And when I tell you, you go like, oh my God, I had no idea. Including when I sat down with Dan Bongino in September of 2022. We sat down and he's like, this is news to me. No shit, Sherlock. You didn't work there, so you can't know about it. And working at the NYPD as a patrol officer or a GS-13 or 14 agent for the Secret Service does not equate you know anything about how the FBI works. I'll tell you this, people. If somebody had offered me the deputy director job, I wouldn't want it. I actually said as much. I'm not your guy. I can't fix this agency, but I can recommend some people who have enough experience to do it. and I at least know how to vet them with the right questions and the right people to go, hey, I'm going to go ask people that have institutional knowledge about this human being. I can reach out with a phone call and vet almost any FBI agent. Do you know that people that, I don't want to say exactly who. Not because I'm not trying to be honest with you, but like I've had people call me up from like inside of Trump's orbit and ask about people. Hey, do you know this FBI agent? Can I trust them? And I go and it's like 30 minutes later. It's like, yeah, that person's one of the good ones. They're out there. We can do that. When you know people in the Bureau and you know who you've been working with and you have friends that you've actually sat and broke bread with and you knew them for years, long before any of this crap happened. Dan got out of the Secret Service in 2011. He doesn't have a single active source in the FBI that came up with him at that time. No way. And after 10 years, they're all corrupted by the institutions. Here's Dan on Hannity telling you, sorry, we're not going to give you what you want.
RFK, I got to check back on that one. There is more coming on the Epstein files. Listen, I know this is a hot potato for folks. I totally understand. My comments were clear. I'm not paid for my opinions anymore. I work for the taxpayer now. I'm paid on evidence. That's it. The evidence we have in our files clearly indicates that it was, in fact, a suicide. We do have video. It's not the greatest video in the world. I don't want to set expectations on fire. However, the video does show in that specific block that he goes in, made a phone call. You'll see 12 hours of guards going to basically check on him, come back. You'll see no one really comes out in that bay, in that area, than him. There's no one in there. When you combine that with the other evidence we will be releasing in the coming weeks, we're still finalizing some of the products. I think it's pretty clear. However, as I've clearly indicated in some of my tweets on my official account, listen, investigations, if new information surfaces in the future on any of these cases, we're always open. I'm just telling you, there's nothing there in the file at all that indicates anything other than, in fact, a suicide.
Do you guys know what a limited hangout is? The limited hangout means that something was exposed, and so you just basically lean on that and say this is the entirety of the thing that you're looking for. Yeah, you basically got a nose of the camel underneath the tent, but we're going to just act like the nose is the entire organism. So Jeffrey Epstein's dead. So we're going to just basically do everything we can to focus in on the suicide or lack of suicide, because that's what people really care about. Nobody gives a rat's ass about whether or not Jeffrey Epstein actually killed himself, in so much as that he's a dead person right now. That's irrelevant. Although there are plenty of you that speculate he's still alive. I don't actually even care. That even doesn't matter. What matters is that theoretically he was doing awful, evil things for decades. People who were powerful were involved. He rubbed shoulders with the most powerful people in the world. And those people had to know something or were involved. And why don't we know more about it? All of this stems from a story coming out of Axios yesterday. It's been reaffirmed by the folks over at ABC, who said they also got this memo. It's been reviewed. This is the salient part that's on the screen. This systemic review revealed no incriminating, quote unquote, client list. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. No prosecutions, no blackmail, no client list, no wrongdoing, no justice for anybody that was hurt by him. And by the way, he killed himself. That was the story from yesterday. That is the craziest, worst way that they could have done this story, period. This is the Axios exclusive. DOJ, FBI conclude that Epstein had no client list, died by suicide, et cetera, et cetera. Again, that actually isn't the craziest thing. Having no client list is irrelevant. You should be able to determine who were the co-conspirators through the evidence that you have, which included apparently thousands and thousands of hours of video, and nobody was in them. That's so hard to believe. It's just Epstein looking at horrible stuff by himself, for himself. And Ghislaine Maxwell, or Ghislaine, whatever her name is, Maxwell is like sitting in a prison cell because she was the sole provider of young girls to this guy and no one else. That's the story you're going to sell us. The reason why you're not hearing all this stuff and why they didn't leak it to Fox, by the way, they went to Axios because it's a left-wing news source so they can have all of their sycophantic followers, all the Bongino army crew that like still desperately believes that we're getting the right thing, that think Pam Bondi's on our side and all this other nonsense. All these types of, all these folks that are out there that make a living pumping up, quote unquote, our team, the movement. they're all going to discredit and say, oh, we're believing Axios now. Oh, we believe ABC now. Oh, we're doing this. When I introduced Kash Patel to the guy that should have been the deputy director, he said something that was really, really salient because Kash was terrified, and it seemed like it came from Donald Trump. He was terrified about the problem of leaks within the FBI. And the person that I recommended made a very salient point. Leaks are a tool of the FBI director. I'll say it one more time. Leaking information, think James Comey, think Andy McCabe, think any FBI director. Chris Wray did several. Leaks are a tool of the FBI director. It is a feature, not a bug. They are able to go forward and give information to the preferred outlets at the preferred times because of the way that it will be received. And the reason it didn't go to Fox or some other news source that you would have been cited about is because those people made a killing running these types of videos. Here's Jesse Waters saying a bunch of really criminal, crazy, wild things.
I also don't care about.
Just kidding. That's somebody else. Here's Jesse Waters saying those things.
4 years since billionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein was arrested. So why do we still know nothing about him? Well, we're finding out tonight some answers. The Wall Street Journal just got its hands on Jeffrey Epstein's private calendar. And it was a lot more suspicious than Brett Kavanaugh's. Epstein was meeting with the kind of people you'd think would steer clear of a convicted pedophile. Jeffrey Epstein was meeting with one of Barack Obama's top lawyers, Catherine Rumler. She met with Epstein dozens of times. Epstein even tried to set up Obama's lawyer to work for Bill Gates. How is Jeffrey Epstein a fixer between Obama's lawyer and Bill Gates? Epstein was also meeting with Joe Biden's CIA director. He wasn't CIA director at the time. He was Barack Obama's deputy secretary of state. William Burns was working for John Kerry at the State Department and meeting with Jeffrey Epstein, a known pedophile. And then Burns becomes CIA director. Today's director of the CIA went to Epstein's Manhattan townhouse where Epstein had sex with underage girls and, where he filmed other men having sex with underage girls. And William Burns went there and was then promoted to the director of the CIA. Now, I wonder if the future CIA director saw the portrait of Bill Clinton in a blue dress hanging in Epstein's parlor room.
Did you hear that he just said conclusively, Jesse Waters on Fox just conclusively said that there were videos of men having sex with underage girls? I don't think he knows that. That's a speculation. But that's why you don't take your story about there's no case here to Fox News, because Fox News would immediately be called out by the people that have a memory longer than a goldfish, that they were talking about this stuff being a pedophilic sting and this blackmail operation for several years now. They've actually made a killing at it. They're keeping and filling up minutes after minutes, hours after hours of content for all the people that watch Fox News and want to have things spoon-fed to them in monologues that are written by not Jesse Kelly, or Jesse Waters, rather. So that's what you got going on there. Did I say Jesse Kelly? That's Waters. I know who it is. Kelly's actually been remarkably consistent. Jesse Kelly's been kind of crushing it. He continues to. Anyway, I knew none of this was coming out, and so did you. If you watch this program, I'm not hawking that we're doing such a great job of it. I'm just saying we can see the obvious signs because the unofficial spokesperson, the person in the movement that you're not allowed to attack, even if they're a liar, even if they don't know what the hell they're talking about, even if they have no sources in the things that they're talking about, already told you the Epstein files are irrelevant. They don't matter. So I knew this a while ago. I told Alex Jones it on May 12th. I sat down with him. I actually told him that in March as well, but it was off air. And I'm going to go back on and hang out with the InfoWars crew today. We'll go do it at noon. So noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern time, if you guys want to see. I have no idea what Alex is going to throw at me, but I know he's hot. Again, I knew all of this stuff. Here's how.
I also don't care about the Epstein information. I don't care about those files. I think it's irrelevant. No one is going to be charged. Everyone got away with it. And I would much rather dig into January 6th, much rather dig into.
Like that. You've got to no.
I just have never cared about it personally.
Because in the files, you're going to find out the I know, but but I'm saying it's you'll get to the cover up. of exactly what the cover-up was. They're even admitting they got these tapes and things. This is Kash and Pam. You got to get it. Once you get into these things, they're rich. As you know, Julie, you've done it yourself with no resource at all, just doing it yourself. You understand as you start these investigations, every day you tell me, hey, I found this, I found this. The process itself delivers. Once you have intention and start moving down.
Is anybody more uncomfortable than Julie Kelly being told how you do an investigation when she probably has no idea? She pays someone to pull the information out of all the PACER documents that she deals with. She has a quote unquote researcher. If you've listened to my interviews with Steve Baker, she was at almost none of the trials that she quote unquote covered. She just had a PACER account and read the transcripts. So she missed all the nuance because she wasn't in there. She's been lying for a long time. She's a fraud. She's always been a fraud. She found a grift. She used to shill things for Monsanto because her husband is a big ag lobbyist. Her husband, by the way, has a partnership deal with the company that paid Susie Wiles for like a decade and a half. And they've been partners for like 7-8 years. All Serco, look it up. All Serco, one of the top lobbying firm, if not the top lobbying firm in Chicago and therefore Illinois, has a ink deal starting back at least in December of 2016 with Ballard Partners. And Ballard Partners is the biggest influence lobbying shop in Florida, which used to pay Pam Bondi. So the husband of Julie Kelly has a deal with the company that was made a partner out of the current White House chief of staff and used to employ the current AG. I'm just saying, if you want to know what a swamp looks like, it looks like a bunch of people that have co-aligned interest. It doesn't mean that any one of these people did one thing criminal. It just means that all of them don't have the principles that you think they do. Tomorrow we'll play you some Kash Patel talking about all of his thoughts on Epstein now that this is out. And of course, we'll wait. There's about a 5% chance, by the way, that this memo was a smoke test, which is what the folks are going to try to claim what it is. A smoke test is when you actually put smoke into a system and see where the leak is. Have you guys ever done this in a car? You can put it into a vacuum system. If there's a leak in the vacuum system, you'll see smoke seep out of somewhere. You can do it with infrared light as well. You can actually see the right kind of smoke. You'll find it. You'll go discover the leak. There's a small probability. The problem is that the people that work for Kash and Dan that would help them set up a smoke test are not loyal to Kash and Dan. They're loyal to the FBI, which is the big problem that we've been trying to tell you guys from the beginning. That's what I got to say about that. It's really troubling. I'll give you one last little piece of news. I'm sure this is totally unrelated. There's a lot of Twitter stuff on this right now, so I'll just cover it right now. Trump is going to meet with Netanyahu at the White House today as Israel and Hamas are discussing a ceasefire. No big deal. They're talking about 80 people in Gaza that were killed in Israeli strikes, get people in field enclaves, and so on and so forth. Benjamin Netanyahu, who's the prime minister of Israel, touched down in Washington early this morning to go to the White House to meet with Trump about the ceasefire deal and the fighting in Gaza. Quote, "We're working to achieve this deal, which is being talked about," he told reporters. This is Netanyahu saying it, and can definitely help advance the outcomes, which we all hope for. Netanyahu thanked Trump for his recent support of Israel during the 12-day war with Iran, calling it a great victory for against our common enemy. There you go. It's a great opportunity to expand the circle of peace in the Middle East. I did see the same things that you guys saw. Dan Bongino hanging out on Timcast talking about a certain Middle Eastern country that had an asset called Jeffrey Epstein. So I can't substantiate it because I didn't see the files, and neither did you, and neither will you ever, because that's where we're at today. How about all that? Is that fun? That's about as fun as we can get today. Thanks for all of you that are sitting over there on Rumble. Thanks for all of you that are hanging out with us on YouTube. Thanks for the chatters that are in there discussing this so vigorously, and all of you that are going to be considerably critical thinking throughout the day. Do not accept narratives. They, even from me, you shouldn't. It's like, that's my opinion. You just heard what my opinion is and some of the facts that I'm able to base it on. So you guys should go out there and do your own thinking. If you're watching us over on Rumble, please give us a like. It does promote us onto the leaderboard. We made it into the top 50 a couple of times last week, even though we are a much smaller channel than anybody else on there. I'm sure they're not doing anything weird. By the way, Chris Pavlowski, the founder of Rumble, the CEO of Rumble, actually started following me yesterday on social. So I don't know if that's good or bad for me. If you're on YouTube, watch us over there. Make sure you give us a thumbs up as well. YouTube.com/@KyleSeraphin. The locals channel where you guys can financially support what we're up to. If you're so inclined, you could do so at KyleSeraphin.com. You can also join for free, and you can just join the discussion. I don't mind that either. We also post all the links to the stuff that we do over there. And then lastly, Spotify, if you want to share it with a friend, It's a simple text message. Just type in KyleSeraphinShow.com. It will take us to Spotify. You get video and you get audio, and you can do either one or both at the same time. You can switch between them. So when you're driving, you can do audio. And when I say something you should look at, you can flip it over to the video. It's actually a really, really great app, and it's free there in so much as you're only going to get the 2 ad reads that we do. That's what I got for today's show. I hope that's fun. Again, I'm going to play you the same palate cleanse we opened with just because, I don't know, this guy is right. I just want to live on a freaking farm and get away from all your sodomy and your multiculturalism and your garbage and the lies. Because I guess I'm just one of those like anti-government, anti-authority, radical extremists, like so many of you, violent extremists, if the FBI had its way. The same people that want everybody deported. Here's some British guy saying my heart.
My long-term goal is to have a farm and to live out as many hours away from you people as possible and let you enjoy your multiculturalism, diversity, and sodomy.
Thanks so much for being part of the program. God bless all of you. Look forward to seeing you. If you want to see us over on InfoWars, again, that starts at 1 p.m. I think I'll be